Red shift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. To make a commune work while still being totally free, you would have to have some experts in the law, especially common law, and how common law interacts with the laws of the federal corporation called United States. And, like Supreme Court precedents which connect the laws that the U.S. passes to the laws of common law, or the common law determinations, or the common law court determinations and stuff, right? There's probably a way of forming a for-profit corporation and having it employ people in the commune without them needing to have social security cards. That would be a very good thing to do, because then those people would officially not be under the authority of the U.S. corporation, and thus would not be under, from what I understand, that would probably, I think, make it so that they would not be subject to the quote-unquote laws of the United States, which is a corporation, and so, yeah, it's better if the commune, I think, could get away with not having people have social security numbers, would be not incorporated. There'd be no straw man for those people, because if people would be born outside a hospital, or even if they were born in a hospital, you refuse to sign the paperwork that gives the person the social security card, which is not against the law. This would be a good thing to do, have people in the commune not have social security numbers. But if that's not known how to do that, to, form a corporation and have people without social security numbers work for it, like if that's not possible, or it's not known how to do that, then it might be best for the commune to have 4 to 6 generations of people in the commune all be born with social security numbers so that they can work outside the commune. And then once the commune is quite large and prosperous and well-armed and all the rest of it, and much larger because of all the couples in the commune each having 6 to 10 kids, then the commune could have several lawyers in the commune, because of the commune having done 4 to 6 generations of eugenic breeding, and the average IQ of the newest generation of people in the commune being very high, like maybe 140, along with really, really good memories, right? Then the commune having lawyers would mean that the commune would then be able to be taught by those commune lawyers how to form corporations that can employ people without social security numbers, and do so without breaking the U.S.'s laws. Maybe at that point, the whole next generation of people in the commune will be born without social security numbers. So then all the older people have social security numbers and the younger ones don't. And that might be necessary, because you might need someone to have a social security number to start a corporation with the United States, so that it can then employ people in the commune who don't have social security numbers. You also need the commune to have a lot of high IQ people, so that the commune can have a lot of subversive coders in it, but also so that the commune can have experts in chemistry, so that it can teach people in the commune how to make things which go boom, to take down buildings and stuff if necessary. The really powerful kind, the kind that can take down buildings. You also need the commune to have a lot of people with very high ratiocination ability, so that the commune can legally buy very advanced weapons. I remember seeing a YouTube video or some video where a guy was firing off some really advanced weaponry, the kind that like normal people can't even buy, right? And they're not allowed to buy. And he said that the people who really want these weapons like this can find out how to legally buy these weapons. He said it's not easy, but if they really want to, they can do the work necessary to find out how to buy these weapons. I can't remember for sure, but I think that he said, or maybe I assumed, but I think he said that you could buy these advanced weapons by forming a corporation and then buying them through the corporation, right? It's not legal for civilians to own these weapons, but if you form a corporation that can own these weapons, then you can have the corporation buy those weapons, right? Kind of like how the corporations that make weapons for the government do, right? There are several, perhaps maybe lots of corporations that make weapons for the U.S. government. And I think, some of them even create new weapons for the U.S. government. So obviously these corporations are allowed to make very advanced weapons. So obviously it's legal for them to do so. So this means that it's possible for a commune to form a corporation and then get the necessary licenses or security clearances or whatever else is necessary, if you even need that at all, to then buy weapons or make weapons through that corporation. Weapons that normally regular people would never be legally allowed to own. Then the commune could be very heavily armed with military-grade weapons and could own those weapons completely legally. And I'm not talking about, M16s or something. I'm talking about, really advanced weaponry. Or at least really powerful weaponry, even if it's not advanced at all. The kind of stuff that, existed in the 50s, but which people were not even allowed in the 50s to own, and have never been able to own ever since then. What if you got, automatic weapons that fired, 50 caliber, bullets and stuff? That would be fucking awesome, right? Have a commune that's just armed to the teeth, totally legally, right? That would be fucking awesome. And then the people in the commune who don't have social security numbers might even be able to legally not pay taxes because of not having social security numbers. I wonder if the Amish pay taxes. I would really like to know that. If you don't have a social security card and have nothing to do with corporations, then I think it's entirely possible that you might not have to pay taxes. Because like I said, you're not technically a corporation. You're not a corporation that is beholden to the United States corporation. Because you are a corporation. You are the straw man if you have a social security number. I mean, the commune could refuse to pay taxes anyway, even if it gets them in trouble with the U.S. government. But once the commune is large enough, let's say, 10,000 people living in the commune because of all the families in the commune breeding like crazy, and the commune buying up more and more land all the time, then if the commune were also heavily armed legally, and also had a bunch of illegal explosives due to the commune members who had master's degrees or PhDs in chemistry, teaching everyone in the commune how to make such devices, once the commune has a lot of wealth due to the average, ratiocination ability in the commune being far above average, and once the commune is very largely populated and very heavily armed and very anti-government and very hell-bent on using, exsanguination if necessary if the government tries to come onto their property, well then I don't think the government would mess with such a commune. The carnage would be too horrific if the government tried to do it. It would mean too many deaths of, innocent women and children for the government to win. And it would make the government look terrible if it killed a bunch of women and children by, doing the Waco thing. It would also make the government look terrible if the government lost a battle against the commune, because that would inspire more people elsewhere in the country to realize, hey, you can defy the government and get away with it. All this stuff is super important to making a commune successful. Not to mention the fact that it would also be very important for the commune to have electricians and plumbers and carpenters and architects. You got to be smart to be an architect. There's a lot of math, a lot of schooling. I think you also got to be pretty smart to be an electrician, although I could be wrong. You definitely got to be pretty smart to be a lawyer. You definitely at least have to have a fairly high ratiocination ability and a really good memory to be a lawyer. You got to be smart to be a coder. You got to be smart to be a chemist. Pretty much all the skills that you need to make a commune successful are things that require both a high ratiocination ability and a great memory. So in other words, to make a commune successful, at least long term, at least successful enough and powerful enough to be left alone by the US government, you gotta do a eugenic breeding program so that you can have enough people in the commune with, high enough ratiocination ability to become lawyers, architects, chemists, electricians, etc. All the skills necessary to make a commune big and powerful are dependent on high ratiocination ability and great memory, and are thus dependent on the commune doing a eugenic breeding program, preferably using sperm bank sperm, because even using sperm bank sperm would be a pretty slow way of raising IQs compared to how fast ratiocination ability will go up once people are being genetically engineered. Although you could also do a eugenic breeding program without using sperm bank sperm, one way to do it would be to only pass on your wealth to your kid with the best genes, thereby making sure your kid with the best genes has the most kids, thus slowly improving your descendants. Another way to do it would be to marry a very good-looking woman, and if you expect your kids to be good-looking because of both you and your wife being good-looking, then you could give away all your sons to a fire department so that the government raises your sons, and then your daughters, due to their good looks, could attract smart, successful husbands from the outside world, thus having kids that are smarter than their mom. But to do such a thing, you'd have to get a very attractive wife, and if you're just an average guy, then the only way that you could get a gorgeous wife would be if she were very stupid or very mentally or emotionally unstable, right? Far better to have a stupid wife than an emotionally or mentally or emotionally unstable wife, right? But even a stupid wife means that your kids are likely to be stupid. And so even if your daughters are gorgeous but stupid like their mom, this means that even though they're kids, your grandkids would be smarter than their mom because of your daughter's husband being smarter than average, because she could attract a very smart husband because of her very good looks, even though she's dumb. Those grandkids of yours, your daughter's kids, would still not be that smart. They'd be smarter than your wife and smarter than their mom. That is their mom, who's your daughter. No, smart. Let's see. No, your grandkids I was talking about. Yeah, your grandkids would be smarter than their mom, who would be your daughter, right? They would be smarter than her, but they still would not be all that smart. Your grandkids would not be, right? The only way to make your grandkids much smarter is to do, eugenic breeding with sperm bank sperm. So by getting a beautiful woman to marry you, you would have to get a woman who is lower than average in IQ so that you could get a beautiful woman to marry you, right? Otherwise, you'd have to have really high SMB to get a woman who's both, high in beauty and in ratiocination ability, right? So that would already set the breeding program back by a whole generation. That is 20 years, or at least 15 years, if you got a beautiful woman with a below average ratiocination ability. And that's no good, because even doing a sperm bank sperm breeding program might only have enough time to do 1 or 2 generations of eugenic breeding before, genetic engineering arises, right? So there's really no point in doing I'm not saying it would definitely be here that quick, but it could be here that quick. Who knows when genetic engineering of people will arise? 20 years, 40 years, 60 years? You never know. So you might not have enough time to do very many generations. So you might not have enough time to do eugenic breeding if you get a beautiful but dumb wife. So you want to do eugenic breeding right away, and you want to do it with a smart woman, even if that means you have to marry an ugly wife. So there's really no point in doing a breeding program that's not a sperm bank sperm breeding program. But maybe because you're a guy, you might want to form an all-male commune, or join a commune that's not all-male, but you choose to not marry so that you can save more money because you want to have the money to be able to get a wife and be able to afford to genetically engineer your kids when you're in your 40s or 50s because you think that it's going to happen that soon, even though it might not. I would not assume that genetic engineering will be here that fast. What if it takes 40 to 60 years before it's here? That would mean it would be too late for you to marry and have kids with genetic engineering. You would have missed your window. If having kids and passing on your genes is important to you, I'm not saying it should be, but if it is, then I think you're much wiser to assume that genetic engineering will not be here in time, and thus you need to give your kids or grandkids an advantage over the rest of the world, and you can do that by having half your kids by sperm bank sperm, so that half your kids are smart, and all your grandkids are smarter than average because of other guys in the commune doing the same thing, and then you marry your kids off to his kids, right? Then due to being smarter, your kids will be able to get better jobs and make more money, and especially your grandkids. Your sperm bank sperm kids will be able to get better jobs and make more money, and all your grandkids will be able to do so. Thus making it more possible for them to have more kids, passing on your genes even more, increasing your genetic line, and also making it higher chances that one of their biological kids will be much higher in ratiocination ability than average, as well as possessed of a good memory, and creativity, and good looks, and good health. Although your biological daughters can have sperm bank sperm kids, and then those sperm bank sperm kids will be biologically yours, and yet will be from sperm bank sperm, and will thus have much higher ratiocination ability than average. Especially once your biological grandkids from sperm bank sperm have sperm bank sperm kids themselves. Then those kids, your great-grandkids, will have even higher ratiocination ability. Maybe 120 to 130. Maybe even higher. That's pretty good, especially if they have great memories as well. And the higher their ratiocination ability gets, the richer the commune gets, and then when genetic engineering arises, you'll be able to afford to do it earlier than anybody else. Because, what if genetic engineering arises within your lifetime, and you're still fertile, you're still able to have kids, and you have enough money, but it's you have extra money to have kids, but you don't have enough money to have them genetically engineered. What if it's something that only the rich, people with $30 million or more can afford to do with their kids? Because it's so expensive at first. And then by the time the cost of having genetically engineered kids comes down to where you can afford it, you're like 70 years old, and now it's too late for you to have kids. Because even if you could, donate some sperm, make sure it's healthy, have it genetically engineered, find a woman to do it with you, you're not going to be able to raise the kid because you'll be dead in a few years of old age. You see what I'm saying? So, it really is the case that you have to do you have to assume that genetic engineering is not going to be here anytime soon, and you have to do a breeding program with other men's sperm, whether it's from a sperm bank or just from a guy who has a really great health, good looks, and a really great really great ratiocination ability and a really great memory. Let's see here, yada, 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 right, and the higher their ratiocination ability gets, the richer the commune gets, and then when genetic engineering arises, you'll be able to afford to do it earlier than anybody else. Or you'll have the startup capital to have those smart great-grandkids or great-great-grandkids of yours start their own businesses with their super high ratiocination ability and near photographic memories due to having been genetically engineered. One of the most important things you need to realize in life is that ratiocination ability and memory are the two most important things in the world. And you also then need to realize that there's not time to do a breeding program without using other men's sperm. There's barely enough time to do a sperm bank sperm breeding program. Genetic engineering will be here soon, probably within 60 years, but definitely within 100 years. But it might very well not be here soon enough to make it wise to wait to have kids. And it might very well not be here soon enough to make it wise to just have kids normally and not do eugenic breeding with, sperm bank sperm. Or other men's sperm, maybe not from a sperm bank. So there's really no other option than to either form a commune or join a commune and plan on never marrying or marry and do eugenic breeding with sperm bank sperm. You can still fight tyranny even if you don't do a eugenic breeding program with sperm bank sperm. You could bring in smart people to be subversive coders for the commune, and you could pay them to do their subversive coding. Give them free food and shelter and clothing and everything, and pay them to do extra coding. Give them free food and shelter and all that for doing 20 or 30 hours of coding a week, and then, pay them to do extra if they want to do extra. You could pay them to work on the mirror for Zeitgeist Eater, or to work on Tor, or, work on Tails or whatever. If you have a commune full of single guys living very frugally and then paying subversive coders to do coding, then that would be a very productive way of fighting tyranny. I don't think it would be as good as doing eugenic breeding with sperm bank sperm, but it would still be pretty decent. And with you, especially if the commune were huge. Because if you had a commune of like 10,000 people, and 1/10 of them were people who are living there for free in exchange for doing some subversive coding every week, 20 or 30 hours of subversive coding every week, then that would be like 1,000 subversive coders. Jesus Christ, imagine the havoc they could wreak on the U.S. government if those coders were really, really good coders, like, 130 to 140 IQs or higher. Like, that would be so good at being subversive and bringing freedom about and really, messing with the government and making it just like Bitcoin so the government can't do a damn thing and is really, really frustrated. You could wreak absolute havoc on the government by, just having like 1,000 subversive coders in your commune. So you don't necessarily have to do eugenic breeding, but, if you want to pass on your genes, you want your genes to continue to succeed and get passed on, you want people to take care of you when you're older, then yeah, I think eugenic breeding with sperm bank sperm, or at least other guys' sperm of some kind, is an absolute necessity, With eugenic breeding, you're constantly getting, ratiocination ability that's higher and higher with each succeeding generation. But that's not something that happens if you're paying subversive coders to live in the commune and code for the mirror or Tails or Tor. And by doing eugenic breeding, you're increasing the size of the commune and bringing in more wealth into the commune with each succeeding generation because of each generation making more money than the last, not just because there being more people and they're contributing more to the commune, but also because of each person of the new generation earning more money because of each generation having a higher ratiocination ability and a better memory. You see? And so you'll be increasing the ratiocination ability and memory of the commune's next generation. Each generation will get better and better. You're increasing the wealth. You're increasing, the power and the number of people because, the more money you make, the more kids you can have. So you're growing the commune as well. So it's doing a eugenic breeding program through using other men's sperm to have half your kids really is the best way to, accrue power, get taken care of in your old age, fight the government, make your commune rich and powerful, have as many kids as possible, make sure your descendants continue to thrive and have more and more and more kids, found an empire, etc. It's really the best thing for doing all of that. If you hire subversive coders, you're losing wealth to pay those people to code subversively. And the people in your non-breeding commune, if you choose to have a non-breeding commune, everybody in the commune is getting older, and there's no new young blood to take over for the older men. And the commune is not growing in wealth because of paying the coders. So really, there's no other option that's anywhere near as good as eugenic breeding with other men's sperm to have half your kids by other men's sperm. There's no other option that even comes close in terms of sustainability because of breeding, in terms of wealth accumulation, in terms of keeping up with the rising ratiocination ability requirement to have a middle-class job, in terms of fighting tyranny, in terms of strengthening the commune to where it will eventually be powerful enough to either be left alone by the government or be powerful enough to deal with the government by keeping it out with force. Looked at from any of these perspectives, it is far better to do eugenic breeding than to use any other technique of fighting tyranny, growing wealth, passing on your genes eugenically, etc. The only option is eugenic breeding with other men's sperm for half your kids. Although if you're worried about the health of the guy whose sperm you use not being great, you therefore worry about having sperm bank kids who have, above average ratiocination ability and above average memory, but below average health. If you're worried about that, I'll point out that some guys have really great, ratiocination ability and really good memories and really good health. And a lot of them even have really good looks, too. Guys like Yan Ling and Alt MGTOW. So you could always just get some sperm from a guy like that and then use your non-biological kids that have both, great ratiocination ability, great memory, and great health and good looks. There's no reason why your breeding program using the sperm of other guys for half your kids has to decrease the health of your descendants at the same time that it is improving your descendants' IQs and memories. But even if that were a necessity, and you had to make the choice between either having healthier kids or having kids that were smarter, have higher ratiocination ability and better memories, I would choose to have kids that have higher ratiocination ability and better memories because, science is the future. And to make scientific advances, do scientific jobs, etc., you have to have high ratiocination ability and great memories. And so unless you want to become like the Amish, that is totally obsolete, totally, unable to fight tyranny, etc., unless you want to become as obsolete as the Amish and just survive by gardening, the only way to really, keep up with the times, increase freedom, make sure humanity survives, become wealthier, enjoy the benefits of technology without the downsides, etc. The only way to do all that is to have kids with high ratiocination ability and great memory. And then, you can strengthen your genetic line. And really, you have to keep up with the rising ratiocination and memory requirements for a middle class job. You have to keep up with that. Even if the cost is, decreased health. That's really just, I don't even know how to use any reasons to explain why that's the case, because it's just so self-apparent to me. It's just so obvious. It's as obvious as the hand in front of my face. You know what I mean? I can't really explain it to you why it is. It's like red is red, blue is blue. That's just the way it is. It's so obvious. I don't know how to explain it, but hopefully people understand what I'm saying here about why it's so important to have your kids and grandkids have higher ratiocination ability and better memory than previous generations. Because unless you're improving like that, you're falling behind. If you're falling behind, you're becoming irrelevant. And who knows, maybe the Amish will eventually not even be able to take care of themselves eventually. I mean, at a certain point, it's got to become, unsustainable or something. I mean, I don't know, or maybe just like you act like what if all the rain eventually becomes poison? I don't know if radiation, when water comes off, when it evaporates off the ocean or whatever, gets into clouds and then becomes rain. I don't know if the radiation particles from Fukushima in the ocean go with it up into the clouds, but if it does, then, the rain falling on the Amish communities is poison too. You know what I mean? What if we just screw the environment up so bad that, it's acid rain everywhere? Not to mention radiation in the rain in too. It's going to be falling on the Amish lands as well, and then it's going to be affecting them too. So similarly, if you let yourself become irrelevant, maybe not as irrelevant as the Amish, but, well, as irrelevant as the Amish, but you still use technology, but you don't have ratiocination ability and memory good enough to, keep up with the society around you, then all the screw-ups of the environment and everything else outside your community are going to affect you too. And so really the only way is to keep up with society and fight the tyranny. You can't just become like the Amish and just walk away and act like it's never going to affect you. That's cowardly, it's dishonorable, and it's self-destructive. It's suicidal in the long term. And I think this is really, there can't be any debate about that, I don't think. This has been Redshift. Hopefully people understood this video. Peace.